I'm going to pull out a sample files. And there is this really old scanned looking image that is screaming that, oh, we need a retouching. So I'm going to use this one to do some of the demo on some tools. Okay. If everyone can find this file on your computer, if you go to sample CS3 in the bridge, and then scroll to find it's called old image.jpg. All right, so let's double click to open this file. So everyone has the old image open in Photoshop. You need to click onto the film strip area instead of the preview area up here. You just need to go into the content and click onto the content area in order to open this picture. So this image is open. Just to make sure that everyone has the same workspace, let's go to Workspace Setup on the top right on here, top right. Looks like that. And then let's go to Photography. And it looks kind of messy. Then let's go to Reset Photography. So everyone has the same workspace. You know, Command and plus will zoom in. Command and minus will zoom out. Zoom in, Command and plus. And Command and minus will zoom out. When you do a retouching, I would at least view the image at 100%, if not, sometimes 200%. Or sometimes I go 300%. And then you can zoom out and then in and then out. That is kind of helpful. You can see a navigator in the top. And you can see where you are actually looking at too, right? Especially when you start to zoom in like this. It's easier to have access to where you are actually looking at. Also, sometimes it is helpful to have two exact same window of the same image next to each other. This is what I mean. If you go to Window Arrange, and then if you go New Window for Old Image.jpg, means that I have exact same image open in Photoshop. So in one picture, if I do something, don't do that to yours, that is reflected onto another one because those are two exact same file. The reason why having two windows open is helpful is that when somebody is zooming in and working on the files closely, sometimes you start to retouch something that shouldn't be retouched. But you are so close that you can't really see what you're doing. So if you have this old image open somewhere on the side as a reference, and then working on this is very helpful to see the overview on the side while you are working on one image really close up. Of course, this is helpful if you have a large monitor like what we have here. If you're working on the laptop, probably not a good idea because any real estate on the monitor space is pretty important. But if you have a luxury of having this nice large monitor at school, this is a helpful tool to use.
So whatever changes you make will happen on both images.
Exactly. I will try that again. That if I come over here to this picture, see? So it's reflected because they are identical file. And then you can open one file in different windows, basically. That's what you're doing. So again, to open two windows of a file, you can go to Window, Arrange, and New Window for old image from the top menu. Okay, so this is how we opened two windows of a file. I'm going to close this window for a demonstration purpose. And if you can take a look at this projection, that would be great. I will talk about different tools that is used to retouch the file, the image. Different tools are available. And if you have completed the lesson 2, you probably have used most of the tools that are available there too. So if you look through them, there are a lot of little dusty marks in the background. And your scan may be worse too. I mean, your scan might have a lot of like sand, like little dust on the surface. And those little speckle of dust can be taken care of at the very beginning of the retouching the process. And this is how to go about this. I'm going to bring in the layers here. And I do need the original layer. And if you like to have a non-destructive editing, I might go ahead and make the copy. Just look right now. You're going to have time to follow later on. Just make a copy of the background so that you have original and the copy that you're going to apply any adjustment and the retouching. So this is the retouching copy. And I will start applying something called Dustin Scratches noise reduction filter. That filter, you don't really want to apply to the entire picture like this. Let me just show you what not to do first. I'm going to go to Filter from the top menu, and then there is Dust and Scratches filter. And I'm applying this to an entire picture. This filter basically works as a blur and sharpen filter mixed together. Here in the radius, this blurs. And the threshold, that would bring back some textures that is lost with blurs, like here. Basically, that's the process of Dust and Scratches. You blur it to get rid of the dust. Like here, I don't really see any dust. I don't see any detail, but I don't see dust either. So I don't know if it is good or not. And then bring back the threshold to recover the detail. Now, this looks for a certain contrast differences. So, image like this that has a big amount of contrast differences between the face versus the background versus what he's wearing. Trying to apply this Dust and Scratches filter to an entire picture doesn't make sense. it makes sense, I'm going to cancel this, if you selectively apply the adjustment part by part. For example, if I go back to this tonality in the back, it's very similar overall. So I go and grab the selection tool, just very simple selection tool that is a lasso tool, and select the area, just a hand held, freehand, select the area that I would like to apply the Dustin Scratches. I will go to filter from the top menu and I go to the noise, again, Dustin Scratches. This time, I'll start moving the radius to the point where I lose the dust. I'm going to close up. Yeah. And then I'll slowly start to bring back the threshold to match the texture outside. I'm going to go closer. So it was this blur, no texture, right? And blurred, so no dust. But slowly start to bring back the texture to match. Is it matching? I think so. So before and after. Before and after. So if you select certain areas that has a very similar amount of contrast, tonal wrench, then this tool is very helpful. You can do the same thing here too. I don't know about that corner area, but I will try. You can kind of select these areas, right? You could go down there too, and then do the same. Filter from the top menu and Dustin Scratches. You know what I did? I went to this top one instead of going to this noise and Dustin Scratches. This top one basically uses the same adjustment settings that you previously applied to. If you like to have your own control over different places, you shouldn't use this, which I wouldn't. So let me just go back. Command Z to undo a step. I will go back to noise, Dustin Scratches, and do adjustment here too. And just kind of making sure. I just want to. Okay. So blur to the point where I lose dust. And then bring back the threshold to match the texture. And say OK. So this is helpful only if you are selecting a part of the image that has a very similar tonal range, and then apply to that. If not, then I would choose another retouching tool. Okay? All right, so that is the Dustin Scratches. Would you like to try it? Let's do Dustin Scratches then. The key thing here is to make sure to have the copy of the background first. So if you look at the layers palette, the background layer is here in the layers palette. Just making sure to make the copy of the background by grabbing this to the bottom part of making the layer icon, and then work on this background copy layer. We know that that we need to have a selection in order to use this tool, and we use the lasso tool. That's the freehand selection tool basically, and selects an area. I'm going to zoom in. Zooming in probably is a very good idea because you need to match the texture. So close up, looking at the image close up is very, very important. And select the certain area. Don't clean everything because I do need some other tools to demonstrate. So you can go in the background, select, you can go to filter and noise, you can go to Dustin Scratches, that's the tool. You can adjust, start with radius, and then bring back the texture by using the threshold. After you are done, you can deselect by Command D to get rid of this selection. And then you can go to another area to select. Let's go back to the monitor. Let's go back to the monitor, the projection. And I'll show you a few more tools. Basically, we have retouching tools around here. It looks like a band-aid. Spot healing brush, and then it shows you how it works. Spot healing brush is probably the most user-friendly, but you don't have a control over how you fix it. Before we have all those tools, well, we'll do a little bit of the history in Photoshop here too. Clone stamp tool. Clone stamp tool was the tool that we only had for a long time. Like from Photoshop all the way to say 7 or 8, and then CS comes in, and then for a long time we only have this tool. This clone stamping tool works like this. Clone stamp tool, I'm going to just zoom in. You need to sample from the area that you like to clone from by holding on to Option key, and then as soon as I hold the Option key, my cursor changes to this circle with plus inside. And if I click and let go of the Option key, I basically sampled from this area, and then I come over to the area that I would like to clean up, and then you simply just paint over it. Now, let's take a look at the option bar. I'm not going to go over entire tools in the option bar, but what's important is this. Sample only current layer, or current layer and below, or all layers. You can go for current layer if you have a layer that has a the pixel information like this one. You can also make a empty layer and retouch on this empty layer too. And then I'll show you the advantage of doing this. I'm going to make the retouch layer that is empty. When you have the retouch layer that is empty and you are choosing current layer, you can't sample from the transparency. So nothing happens. You like to go for current and below, or if you have something on top of this layer, then you like to go for all layers. Right now, I don't have anything on top of this retouch layer, so I'm going to go for current and below layer. And I would hold Option key and click to sample and come over to this area. Now I can retouch them based on where I sampled from. Also,
careful with that, right? Because you can create patterns.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Also, another thing that you like to look into is something called aligned. This I tend to check it. This means that, let me just Option and sample, and I come over here, right? And I'm holding down the cursor, the mouse, and do you see the plus mark right below my cursor, the circle area? That's where my sample is coming from. So I can tell where the sample is coming from, and the sample comes aligned with a cursor. If this is unchecked, and if I sample from this area, say this area, if I come over to this area, the sample is not aligned. It's coming from a little above the shoulder area. So aligned is usually helpful, unless you completely would like to take the information from one place and keep going at it. If the sampled area, I sample from, say, this area, okay? I sample, and if this align is checked, this plus mark, do you see? Comes with, as I move the cursor, it's aligned.
So it's moving
together with my cursor.
The circle, so it'll always be taking a sample where the X is.
Whereas aligned unchecked, then it always sample from one place and then it won't move with the movement of my cursor.
Unless you reassign it, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this is important. Opacity, you can change them. I would keep the mode for now normal. And if you look closer, that's the brush size. Brush size and the hardness. I tend to go for the hardness rather harder than softer, like more than 50% definitely. I would tend to go 70-80% because that fuzziness tends to create the loss of the texture. Also, this brush, I tend to have this a little angled and sometimes make it slightly, I mean, depending on what you're fixing, but a little angled and then skinnier, and something like this on the shoulder here will target better in this way. Yeah.
Hardness, what exactly is hardness? Is it just the way, is it referencing to how hard the brush is put down on the piece of paper, or is it the brightness or darkness of it?
A hardness is the basically the fuzziness of the
so how smooth it is around the brush.
Right, right.
So it's more of a straight.
That's a very good question. So let me see. If the hardness is 100%, then this is what happens. The edge of the brush is really, really, really hard. I'm going to go to hardness 0. That's the difference. Yeah. Okay. So I tend to not to have 100%, but something like 70-80%. That would retain a good amount of textures, but then won't be so hard around it. Well, I don't really see that much differences at this point, but I should. And the good thing about having this retouch layer, dependent from the background layer, is that here it is. The retouch layer, if you like to get rid of one place. If you want to get rid of the one place of the retouched information, you can always do that by selecting this area, because I don't want this appearing in his face. I select this area, which is this, on the retouch layer, right? And then I can hit delete and then get rid of it. And other place that I already retouched are not affected by it. That's why the retouch layer with a transparency is often helpful.
And would you re-explain why you want the brush angles?
Is it like actually holding a brush and the brush goes down at a certain angle?
And then also, it will, especially something like this, by the way, especially something like this has a long area that needs to be fixed. You can target certain areas, right? Instead of, if it is completely circle, you basically include a lot of areas that are not part of the area that I would like to fix. If I change this, then I really target a certain area, and then the surrounding area won't be touched. You don't really want to distort that by putting the fix.
And do those brushes below, I think it says brush or something like that?
There are all predefined brushes that you can go, but for a retouching, usually you can use the regular brush and change the size and the hardness. So that's the most elemental kind of a true to sampling type of a retouching tool. So just remember that sometimes this tool comes in really handy, because what you tell this tool will do it for you. Not necessarily thinking and trying to adjust the tonalities for you automatically. It's not automatic. This tool is not automatic. But if you tell things in the right way, this tool is very, very useful. Okay? I'm going to deselect, and I'm going to show you more of the contemporary tools. This one, the spot healing tool, a healing brush, is probably the first brush that I would start using, spot healing brush tool. Spot healing brush tool is just, you don't tell anything, and Photoshop will figure out. And then this could not use the spot healing brush because there are no enough information in the source pixels. That is because of this. Sample all layers needs to be checked. So remember that. This is extremely important.
So it was referring to your layer by itself.
Right. Right. So here the sample all layers, and you like to choose this content aware way of fixing the information. So Photoshop basically figure out by itself what needs to be fixed, and then just brush it over, and if it looks like it's a dust or the area that needs some fixing, then it will try to match the surrounding pixel informations basically, and automatically fill this area with the similar tones of the surrounding area. So that's probably the easiest and most automatic tool to retouch, spot healing brush. Sometimes though, I don't know, these things start to become pretty smart, so I don't know if I encounter a problem at this point. Seems like it's working pretty well, so I will move on to different tools, but if you encounter some problems, then there are other tools that you can use. Healing brush tool is the tool just below it. Healing brush tool. So that healing brush tool is similar to the clone stump tool. You still need to sample the information. And the healing brush tool has a brush size as well as actually a spot healing brush has a sample size and the brush size. Very similar to how the clone stump tool works, right? And you like to make sure that the current layer and below is selected instead of just the current layer, because current layer is transparency. And you like to most likely use the lined option at the top. Other things, I'm going to hold on to this. Use the normal blending mode. And the fusion part, that is a default of 5. Just keep it as is. It's something to do with the softness of the surrounding area. And you simply go in here, hold option to sample, and let go, and come over to clean. Hold option, and I think my brush is a little too big, and then come over to the area that you like to clean. Hold option to sample, and then clean, basically. The difference between the clone stamp tool and the healing brush is that healing brush, if you sample from the dark area like this, right? I'm sampling from this background, and I'm going to try to come over to his head in here. It's not putting the dark dot here. Even if I'm sampling from the dark area in the background, this tool basically is trying to match the tonality of the surrounding area. So it's a little more forgiving. Little more forgiving than clone stamp tool. And lastly, I have the patch tool. And this patch tool, this one, you like to look into option bar and choose the patch from normal to content aware kind. Content aware kind is pretty smart. You select the area. I'm going to go into the right shoulder. You select the area. And you move it and choose where the sample is coming from, and then let go of it. And then it disappears. You can do the same thing here. I think something happened though. It's a little dinty. I'm going to go back. What about that? I'm actually going to select this area and delete that, and I might start over. The reason why I'm selecting this black background and his shoulder is that I just want to have this clear distinction of the tonality and then let Photoshop know that there are difference in tones, so that Photoshop recognizes the difference and then try to fill that difference. I think this worked. Yeah, to the surrounding areas. Yeah, so this one worked in the so select and then move to find the tones that matches and the texture too. So Arbaro, it's not just the tones, then it also implants the texture as well too. Yeah. All right, so those are the tools that is pretty useful. We went over clone stamp tool, and then we went to spot healing, healing brush, and patch tool. Let's have a short break then. Come back in 10 minutes, and then we'll work on the doggy picture together.